Hi there. Good evening, everyone. My name is Mr. Dark Whispers. Do you like Honeymoon Stories? If yes, press that subscribe button and join our spooky family. Write in the comments where you are today. Let's get started. It is like this. The pair went on a honeymoon after marriage, and peculiar things started to happen to them. So the story is that I'd ask you to subscribe to our channel and like the video before you hit the story in the comments where you are from and what time you'd be watching this, so to tune in and music, chill out, and the honeymoon has always filled me with excitement. And in fact, what I was most thrilled about when it came to a wedding also were the case with me. Most of my just soon to be married friends were so excited about their honeymoon trips and the hotels they had visited that any surprises that would have been a complete waste of time. For a week where I can forget the world, I want to be the happiest. We were so thrilled we even laughed it off. It was the day I had been waiting for so long that I would get married in 6 months with my guy, whom I loved so much. Trust me when I say I was overwhelmingly excited about him turning out to be my guy. We were too excited to be here. I was beaming and so were my friends. The majority were more than emo. At last, the day had come for me with a mere 6-month relationship record with my husband to receive his ring, so much to my joy being his spouse. He was in fact the perfect model of the ideal man I wanted, and even more. In conclusion, I smiled knowingly but also sang and danced, because I was walking to my husband, who was eagerly waiting for me at the affection point. Then came the sleevelessness with a boy's nice response. I have never expected my man to be so stressed out because of the dress. Then I discovered even more reasons why he would be my perfect match in the front of a man who I saw in the crowd crying. It was only me who already decided for some and other questions that I would always return to him with a quote next time, after maybe getting on his nerves. Overall, it was the best day for the wedding. That is to say, the engagement symbol was a kiss. Eventually, we reached the car. I asked him where we were headed. He told me to just relax and have fun. I could not even imagine what it was, but I was ready for what I had to do. The hike went through the roof of my happiness. I could only imagine what it must have been like when I was on the top. I was smiling widely as we rented the car. I sat next to him and asked once more where we were going. He just laughed. How crazy funny he was. Yet he never called me darling. But he did at that moment, which made me dislike this word so much. But for the sake of that surprise, I said nothing. The journey was supposed to be full of memories, but this stress was weighing down my happiness. I was nervous at the same time, no idea when I fell asleep. Only that I woke up when we reached there, but felt as if on stage. My heart was racing in rhythm with the whole body. When the heart's palpitations subsided, I got to a wonderful mansion that looked as if from a fairy tale. I walked a bit shakily but with eagerness through the front gate across the yard, heading towards the house with fire filling me up at every step. I could not believe what my eyes saw. The facade was of ancient style, having the beauty and gracefulness with gardens around. Just then, a voice called me behind. I turned round to see a man who looked like in his 30s smiled at me, saying, "Mrs. Thompson." The butler closed the door. He informed us that was his duty. I huddled myself looking for Jeremy for comfort. However, his face was cold. I asked if something was wrong, and he said no, although his tone was odd. He gave an authoritative command and told me this was our new home. I firmly told him that I had no intention of living in this house, for it was not my home. It only had beautiful features. Thus, my heart belonged to our old home. As my reply was taken in some painful way, I received a slap on the cheek. I was still trying to comprehend what was happening, as he had never shown violent behavior towards me before. I became worried, thinking I had lost my mind. I trusted Jeremy, so I was telling him he might require some assistance in fixing his bathroom. He seemed like a different person, thus I couldn't fathom his deeds. In the bathroom, we did taps and also mocked up the installations as if it were some fancy hotel bathroom. Everything was good, but then we heard Professor yelling at us. I'd shut myself in my room. After he went away, I opened the stairs door to meet the new male lift manager. He was amazing. I would not suffer under a person who was unable to do that right. I was relieved. Nevertheless, His hurt sometimes popped up during my husband's talks with him. Papers said he was my husband, so I would suspect him of such things. What foolish I was. A man should not have such a low profile as to permit somebody else to take over their place. He was still better than before. However, him providing help to me made me possess worries. In addition, I was anxious about being a foreigner and common class. Then I felt strange nerves. At last, while crowded there, I complained to a girl that I gave up, trying hard to be different from what I was not. He was the smartest person around thus. No one should take his place. I was now free and no longer afraid of anything. Hence, I turned my attention towards movies or songs or something that is easy rather than listening to myself again. I came back feeling its absence. He was my beloved friend. I grieved for Jeremy when I learned he was gay. I felt lost and angry. Should I still trust him? My thoughts were messy and unfair. I wanted to be like him, yet hated my own feelings that made me feel unworthy of him. So naturally, I'd wanted to be that boy dancing with boys like Jeremy, but not one who just danced with girls such as Melissa only, which was his preferred partner. Still, we had a blast dancing together despite our differences. Then he made me mad on the playground. In retaliation, I kicked him hard in the groin, which caught him off guard, hence he was bent over painfully. As soon as he had gotten up, I struck back harder than ever before. The memory stick that I had remembered during the love note to Jeremy once undermined me suddenly came back from my pockets. Thus, without hesitation, just shoved it into his right eye, which left him with quite disastrous results. I heard him yell as I opened the door quickly. I ran out of the room as I was scared. I grabbed my car keys from the living room and sped out with the butler having appeared behind me as I drove off. I was driving in a daze, but I found the police station at the highway to tell them everything. Now I was far from Jeremy and guilty for him. I wondered if I could trust sprucing my life in future. Living with my husband Ethan is a good time that leads to a moment of the past year having been married. Only our immediate families were in our wedding. Our first trip was to France and Spain, where it cost a lot. Ethan kept it a secret until we landed on our honeymoon, which is my best beach trip, which I always wanted after growing to see the mountain region of Colorado. Seeing the island for the first time at sunset with a big hotel made me so thrilled. He picked good friends. Only his college mates qualified. He liked surprises. He found a honeymoon which needed no gadgets. So he had to rely on his friends for details rather than an official itinerary. Only details made known were time and location. Later, a peer friend informed me that they were on Meyer, yet I was jungled and disappointed in their company. At that peculiar time, Ethan stood next by. I felt both unhappy and ill at ease compared to my previous self. This island was charmingly fashionable. However, it was not attractive before my eyes. Though one ought to have taken a walk around the beach, I merely reclined there till sleeping led to awakening under the scorching sun rays. I used to enjoy sunbathing and swimming. After many years spent in Colorado's highlands, I craved plunging into the ocean waters and basking on the sand. My husband proved wonderful at finding lodgings for our exceptional trip. Sunshine lay low, welcoming us as evening set in upon entry into our luxurious king suite room. On day 3 of our honeymoon, we had a major blow-up. Just learning and feeling totally young, we thought we could never be apart. As was the case, we hoped it would work out. All of us had the idea that communication was difficult, especially last year, as we traveled abundant Egypt, as well as exquisite the new place that was very different. On both of us had a lot of involving roadblocks to catch the lucky fish to win the trip. There was tension since the process was very slow, and so nothing made us alter our original position concerning this fishing record. Luckily, I managed to take a photo when that lady finally caught the fish. We even had other family members and others there too. Therefore, it did not feel sorry for them at all. The setting facing the sea was just mind-blowing. My passionate desire for the sea made me go swimming with my friend on the 4th day for the stay there. We were having lots of fun. We found it just as much fun as we had anticipated, and there are many enjoyable things that the hotel offered, and we decided to look about everywhere. Everything went on smoothly up to the point where they informed us on the way that, "Sorry, today is your last day here." I had to ask Ethan, how do we end up like this? He was looking at that receptionist straight away, as puzzled as I was. This is family of mine. I had the same booking 5-day stay. However, after looking into the screen here, just realized it was only where's booked for 4 days, the same case for some rooms. Mrs. Yvonne Langham addressed me, looking distressed. I am sorry about this. It's not possible to stay longer, although I suppose it would be a nice idea, hence I realized today is your last day here. We were at the reception the night before our return flight. We were far from the airport but still had time to leave. Eddie and I arrived at Paraguay much earlier than planned. We had much time to stay on the island. However, after seeing the locals online, we had no idea who they were. People were kind but not always helpful. This was the exact opposite of happy farewells for the honeymoon. My stomach was in knots as I thought about the situation. We were still moving around looking for a hiding spot, but panic was rising and night was creeping in. There were so many questions in our heads. Back at square one, and despair lay ahead, which the darkness brought. We never thought we would be stuck like this again. It was frightful and scary. Then came Vincent and Tom, who led us to their family house. His calmness made us trust him quickly. So, the newlyweds from America? That's cool. Most of our Turkish visitors love your country. But also we have some Sicilian ones too, he joked with us. I had let know him we were on a strict budget, and all arrangements had been done by Ethan for this. He clearly understood our plight, and as such, our discourse shifted to where we would be staying overnight again. There was fellow who resided in the proximity of a lodging, but it lacked the fame enjoyed by yours. It happened to be a lovely abode, and thus it would probably appeal to you. The house was reminiscent of a charming elderly woman who awaited with open arms at the very moment we proceeded through the entrance into Maritom's domicile. The second occupant situated within the same area was named Ethan, as he had been summoned by Ortomas to provide assistance in carrying luggage. Henceforth, he proved exceedingly congenial taking charge of our bags. This large and aged woman displayed extraordinary warmth in welcoming us. Her beaming countenance formed the very first aspect that greeted both my aunt and me upon entering Maritom's quarters. Such kindly gestures emanated from her while she introduced me to him, plus he too helped out during our stay there afterward, Tomas being felt the luggage on his back. As far as the accommodation concerns itself, it had evidently undergone modifications, transforming a past collective residence into a small hotel snugly settled right northward of Falmouth. Located at the corridor's end stood the rooms reserved for guests, sufficing though not particularly pleasing on first impression. We later found them rather noisy and refreshing, but ultimately homely in appearance. It took but mere stones thrown away from hence to reach the beach. As for me, I had simply traversed through some woods similar to what I had done before. Of course, swimming in that ocean was entirely permissible, plus only good things were in store there. Tom urged us to relish the sea, and being in agreement with him, Mara replied saying she would be making up dinner for us, or else we could opt eating out, backing up Tom's favorable comments. Following that stroll around the Market 3, my dad joined with those guys amidst uncontrollable happiness. He expressed everything within him concerning how they looked, fascinating about food prepared by her without hinting at fakeness, but rather through boasting, which would be mouth-watering, taste-wise, suggesting blow-by-blow, joyful times during the eating party before departure. At this incident, my little remembrance of that day will remain alive in my mind since all of us retreated into our room, lying down on the bed. There it was just one more call, day 6 to about 9 o'clock. We woke up, but it was already lunchtime. The food was like corn paste. Mara told me she felt very thirsty. I called her over to talk about it. The meal was great, and we enjoyed it. During the feast, we had a lot to eat. The only concern was the risk we took. We were not free from our physical needs. We thought it was our bellies. We went up to the bed and began crying. While I was groaning, she kept quiet. I believed we would go back to normal. When she woke up, there was silence. I went out to find Mara or Tom, but the house was empty. I entered the room to wake Ethan. I was shocked to see someone ahead of me. I was totally confused. It dawned on me that all our belongings were stolen. Our money, passports, and stuff were gone. I felt completely helpless. The thieves had made us sleep. They then stole from us. These guys had really used us. Our first thought was to tell the police. We then realized the door had been locked from outside. This was a very isolated area. There was little chance anyone would hear us. Begin your task now. You can set the timer. Your feedback will ensue after the allotted time. You cannot proceed unless you receive a positive remark. Perform the subsequent assignment only if you pass this one. I was in a state of panic and trying to open the door of the emergency exit. Ethan could not find it since all exits had been blocked. We might remain here until morning that I expressed with fear our flight might be missed. What were we to do? Cash and identity we are missing, as I exclaimed throughs. The night was descending, so did the hope of rescue. We required to keep cool and think reasonably. Horror of what had occurred enveloped us like a heavy fog. The room was dark, we were aware of it, was which crept in us. To find a way out, we had to come up with an idea that struck me for the lamps in my head flickered, which to join bed sheets to make a rope for climbing down the bedroom window just like in the movies. With no choice we did, and luckily smiles upon us. Eventually, we got out and sought assistance from a local who took us to the police, and had been unaware of it at least. I will attempt to say the words used in this heavy metal tune, as long as I can pick up the syllables being sung. That said, I really do not mind if you have a different taste in food from mine. You should just relish your preferred dishes in the company of your pals, but I beg you to cut the conversation about food when I am present. You and your little one should not be expecting as, and it is apparent you have been deceiving you and want my boss to change the goals, which in a way are not clear, while this school district misappropriates the funds meant for kids first. It was hard for us to leave our own small island at the airport this evening. There was joy, giggles, and sweetness all around us. When they kissed for their first time, could it not have been that the love rose in the air? I always wished we could forget everything else, becoming lost only in each other's company. I could see smiling faces amongst people nearby, but we were not concerned. The next day found us in a kind of dream. I decided to go and make reservations for our trip during the time that my wife was still deep in slumber. I did not mean to awaken her, however. As I was dressing up, I heard her soft voice from bed saying, "Where are you heading?" I apologized for not thinking that I would just book some boat rides tomorrow, I replied her. "Oh, return swiftly because I will miss you before long," she said smilingly. Thus, I still moved on with determination to finish booking our trip. "What time is best?" the girl said. "I don't know. It depends on the season. In the hot days of summer, lots of folks are gone almost everywhere, so it's nice and quiet. As for the oldness of the city, you won't have good views now. Besides, if you pee to the river, you will probably get lost," the boy exclaimed. The receptionist looked at me and she expressed her thought with her eyes, which made me feel that we were thinking about the same thing. I stepped out of the office grinning from ear to ear to express my excitement about giving her many flowers. Outside, there were piggy roses and some animal thorns. I entered the door and saw a different sight. She stood by a window crying. None of those flowers was in her hand. She turned away from me outside the dark room, yet she kept crying quietly within herself. I rushed toward her and asked, "What happened, sweetie?" hoping that I could hear something happy. Unfortunately, she replied with a red and swollen eye, "A man hit me," while tears were flowing. "Oh my God! What? How? Where is he?" I yelled out in fright. "No, he just came in and nearly knocked me out of the land of the living. I don't even know him." She spoke shakily, hiding behind the tears of the cry for help. The unknown person made me anxious. "Luna, I will call for help." "No, don't call a crazy person," she said fearfully. "I won't let that guy just go," I told her. My heart was angry as I reached the bathroom. I needed protection. Quietly, I walked down the hallway, fearing the monster could be there. I remembered the night when I thought there was someone else in the room with me. Finally, I turned back to Luna. The fear in her eyes made me feel more uneasy. I had to quickly imagine what to do in the bathroom. There was something unclear about it, yet I had seen no one there. I went back to her when she was crying. She was so afraid it broke my heart. I knew that together we would get through this. I was in fact unaware of what was in store for me, as an unfamiliar feeling was present in my body. At the moment, I had the feeling that something was wrong. Luna was hitting her face hard with her fist. I slid over to her and shouted at her to get help. I tried to show her how badly I needed help with my words. There was nothing wrong with Selena, but she called me a liar. She was shouting at the top of her lungs. I was shocked and confused as I tried to make sense of her actions. "Stop, Luna, you are hurting yourself," I yelled as I walked over to her. As I approached her, she froze immediately, and her whole face had changed. She did not look like Luna anymore. She looked like a different person. "You cannot help her." A voice that was not her own said, "You cannot help yourself either. You are such a terrible person." My soul gently spoke to me saying, "Look, Luna, talk. It was you who did this to her. You were looking for the aid of any kind. Here I am, what do you want to do about it?" I was as scared as if I were stuck in a horror movie while also hearing these stories. Through it all, she managed to dodge and deny responsibility for her actions and took on the role of victim at times. She had done unusual things before, but in fact she acted strange overall. What exactly did it mean when I say that she was acting strangely? A voice asked a child whether they remembered their past. The child felt frustrated and helpless and wanted to help a friend, but thought the friend was the cause of their own problems. His friend took a knife and held it to their neck. Out of fear, the child jumped on their friend, took the knife, and saved her. He noticed the friend was not moving and felt worried. He shook his friend to get them back to reality, but suddenly she blamed him and accused him of hurting her during their honeymoon, keeping calm while she did that. There were workers outside watching. The friend explained things in a way that made it look like the child had done wrong. They were not believed. They could not be in the same room anymore. When the papers got there, it was not what was expected, but there was no regret about what happened. I now possess considerable wealth and influence. My recent experience in real estate has endowed me with a level of affluence typical for adults. Yet Luna made attempts to seize some of my assets. During our court case, she believed that she could secure a favorable verdict if she presented some witnesses supporting her allegations. In fact, it is permissible to record videos in certain Brazilian hotels for security purposes. So I took advantage of this recording to exonerate myself. The hotel recording revealed that Luna had fabricated some stories when I arrived in the room while she was preparing herself. After listening to the recording, she admitted that there was no evidence against me. I didn't want the police to punish her for what she had done. The saddest thing is that I would have gone to great lengths to find help for her if she had gone mad, but now I feel regretful. The marriage ghost has hovered over her at least once or twice. However, she never loved me but used me as a means to her end. It is thus not surprising to rid myself of her. The most difficult aspect is that I did not really get to understand her well. She remained a total stranger to me. I hated reliving the bitter memory of our honeymoon, which turned from a beautiful dream into a nightmare due to my powerlessness on the final day. I was depressed for several days and didn't enjoy anything. We are going to have a great time having some fun together as we reminisce about all those moments we had. She has no problem in my remembering loving her. I do appreciate her immensely since she is my best friend so dear. Luna, Now that I help me with a position, some emotional pain, you find it hard to bear to heal, and even able to feel this smile as I see I also feel. Again, can see that before it happens there were times. But we have both. It's only those who have loved that can somehow tell inside, have experienced this kind of intense vulnerability. Such pain was just unbearable for my heart due to being rejected a few times, but gradually it off. In Mexico, this is the spot. Transport for enjoyment with expiring tickets was the task of our choice. I am to find out the best places in front of us. Upon arriving at this stunning point in the world, you will be surprised at the kind of strange beauty that exists. Our house was like residing in the presence of a god. There loom huge hills that will take your breath away. There exists a vast tropical rainforest where a magnificent lake can be found existing only in the imagination. However, on the first few days in this very special place, I do have a collective record of mixtures of excitement as well as beautiful memories. In order to see the town, We hopped onto a bus and enjoyed guided tours to interesting places, along with those offered food, and if at all, we noticed the circus in all our faces. Further understanding of how broad an extent of a wonderful smile is was the fact that I never did see it before. I would really like to give her an extraordinary honeymoon. But little did I know that there were good times ahead and bad times just around the corner. First, several days later, the manager called us together so as to announce the events our package had reserved specifically for us on our last days together in this heavenly place. For sure that personally, I was so much excited to be part of an ecstatic event tomorrow night, such as witnessing traditional dances and songs performed by local artists, as well as top-class local food, which they were going to stage for us fullness according to him. It has an authentic nature, being that particular one especially romantic. Get ready for a fabled night in a dense forest. Urban stories suggest only or rumored to be true, so that those urban story conclusion is gained which by chance lead to the misfortune by mere accident. The fairy circle's bells going to ring, as if going to gather at the nighttime, with the summoning light fly that meandered in the air lively moves, as to reveal a great magic which no one can deny being happening out there during that night. When I woke up in fear, like troubled Alvier all around as I get worried, and asked her at what time, she shook her head saying, "Nothing is going on in here," being aware she could have been scared off because of restoration. Also, with the loud sobbing heard from afar, I did not wish to leave my bed and see it up. I told her it was just a normal peaceful night and nothing was wrong at all, so she hopes that it is right with my thinking. Maybe like there was just the wind, or else some staff from the resort playing tricks instead of crying, so I was not able to make her relax. I am holding her heart, which I felt beating fast because of fear, while checking out all corners of the room always, while it made think of doing so, with the very air being too heavy with fear. The night was under the same touchy mask, having plenty of food and dances being known by everyone, which I was just together with Elvira the first time. Slipping so freely among others, we danced like crazy at that time. Out was there no one under that tent but me alone, such that after half an hour I drove her when one went home and took pictures of them all, 20 of each other to party again. I feel like being double having fun, and that alone was home. It was dark in the forest. I couldn't see if there were any animals there that could be making the noise. I had to give up thinking it was people. In the evening, the silence was huge except for the loud noise that made me feel so miserable. Some folks had their sense out of reality. They did not get what I was saying, plus I got to tell the resort manager, as nobody could say Elvar and I bumped into the same thing. I made him sure about that element. The guy had that blank look, yet probably alerted the locals. It is said that they occasionally scared the visitors at night. The sky was alight with the fireflies. We were first at the camp out by the lake. Close to 10 p.m., we were still waiting on the bugs that had not come yet, but the waiting was worthwhile. It was magical to see those bugs putting on their show of lights. The moon was bright and the fireflies were flashing as they moved in a dance. Then they switched off the lights. When we got there, the man told us about the bugs hunting one another. It was an amazing tale. I could hear their buzzing sounds behind me. So I asked all to look as they were dive-bombed haphazardly by some of the God. Does the manager know? He was silent. A loud scream pierced the air, freezing us. I felt a ghostly energy. It was not human. Then, Jackie cried out. She asked the manager if we could leave. We saw fear on his face. He muttered, "Lorona." We didn't understand. The crying grew louder. Suddenly, the manager screamed and ran into the jungle. We just stared at each other in shock. Who was Lona? Elvira gripped my arm in fear. We didn't know what to do. The crowd faded into darkness. A woman in dark clothes appeared. My thoughts raced. Was she a poacher? I wondered if I should run or wait for him. He calmed down eventually. I lied that a hunter was close. He never came back. An abnormality within the body had emerged. The skin looked different when one looked at any part of the body, for clothes were put on. It was naked to the air. Just then, there was a sudden movement, so all of us ran away quite fast. There was also a terrifying voice that emerged from the woman. The noise made by the voice seemed to have a lot of people running uproariously and confusedly in the large open field. We did not mind the other bodies. New and I had no choice but to go along with her. The woman knew which way the lake was. She said that she was the forest spirit and we could not see anything further. The noise coming from other people was overwhelming. At this moment, it was easy for doctors to note what went wrong. Then later on, there was another cry of distress heard from afar. In a short while, Jackie started shouting for the child, Trevor, who was part of our group. Elvar's story was that this time they were not those who were saying that he was unfamiliar to his name, he had better known. They started searching on the boy who was going to the lake, but neither had he been found the boy. The police were informed that they were looking for this child in the darkness of night. Back at the hotel during the night, there was another report the manager was missing just like that little boy. Elvar got afraid more now. We left that night even if Jackie was mad. The lake looked great, but I thought of Jackie and her lost son. 9 years later, and the search is still in vain. I feel sorry for her and scared when I remember that screaming woman. Some say she's crazy, but I disagree and I have reasons. When I see the lake, I remember how they laugh at me. The first time I told them about my divorce, they called me picky and told me to fix the marriage. Some said I rushed into marriage, but when I tell them why, they don't say anything. In my life, there was a time I used to be very quarrelsome. Parties were my weak spot where I would drink, and when I began to feel dizzy, I would sit on a bar stool. All of a sudden, Jim noticed I was with this nice guy named Matt. We talked a lot, and suddenly I found myself in love. Matt was quiet, but sweet and funny with me. He liked staying at home. I loved to dance and have fun. That was okay since there was this kind of spark between us. Eventually, I asked him to marry me, but at first, he said no, which I thought was crazy. We had a lovely wedding, but planning the honeymoon was tricky. When he asked, I wanted us to go to Europe. However, he kept insisting on driving somewhere in the country. It felt like I had no choice but to accept his offer as he never went there before. I just wish I could go myself to Europe. My husband and I found a beautiful place. He loved it so much that he wanted to stay there forever. I, however, did not like the idea of living such a bohemian life. But the trip sounded interesting with a good plan for food and hotels. We traveled stage by stage. On the first day, we boarded an early train to go for lunch and we would return later on in the beginning. I was a child and did not like being changed. Night set in with stars that were shining in the sky. Osongong was a time when it was dark. I looked at him, he looked at me, but he only laughed. I waited for him to reveal the destination for 2 days. I said besides my pants would not fit. He laughed. I recalled which he alluded to me. I did not like surprises. He had said he was amazing. Suddenly, the car came to a stop once he pressed the brakes. I noticed an impressive man who was pushing a baby stroller in the street, and my heart jumped. I was not sure if this man was bald, wore strange clothes, gave the impression that he was beggar. But as I looked at the man, he seemed like a bum and it was sickening him, a baby boy. The man beside me noticed and asked what was funny. I explained, but he did not understand. He was angry. His talk was the silly talk of the crazy. He was like a wild animal on the street. His clothes were dirty and he had a bag of rubbish. I turned away from him. I felt uneasy. Shouldn't we help him? I asked Mike. It was the 2nd of February. The winter was cold. He was walking without sense. Some people can help him. I wanted to roll down the window. What was wrong? His voice was weak. His ears were dirty. My feeling made me sad. I thought of my little baby too. There was some man near the stroller. What is in that box? Oh, the dead bird in it had no feathers. The man stared at it and I was banged. He took it as if it were alive. There must be problems with his brain. When we were about to go, he laughed loudly and told us to move aside. That birds have to talk on their honeymoon. A man screamed in fear as he couldn't do what had to be done. Matt made a wicked statement with his eyes, but went off a bit, then hastily increased speed. I yelled at him, "Why do you want to hurt him?" But by that time, it was already too late. The car banged him strongly, and it seemed to me like the wheels burst upon him. I got paralyzed for a few moments before starting to move again. The man was screaming at Matt. It was clear something was brewing between them as I had to keep away, but Matt was laughing loudly when a pram was thrown far away. The man's body seemed bloody and twisted in a strange way. I was astonished because at that moment there was no section of the person responsible for that accident and I was alone. But Matt decided we ought to leave that place quickly. At that moment, I was being tortured by Matt's rude behavior to an extent that surprised me. He was not worried about killing the man. He could have said it was just a game at that moment. I thought I had become an alien in my own home with him, yet he was the major reason I became his wife. I wanted to get out of the car, but he wouldn't let me do so. I was paranoid as my friends were discussing me behind my back. I knew that my beloved man was attending with me at our marriage, with a post they had sent to each other earlier. She had invited him to accompany us. Although I felt like dying, I wasn't going to allow Emily to observe how infuriated I was. I was furious, but only at the situation. So I got into her gallery and chose those photos, the most terrible ones. I resolved to indicate it on her Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, without a word that would have shown her in real colors so that folks could see what a phony that girl was. Perfect from outside. None of them would have realized the fact that she's flirty when there was a guy and a half-clad girl in sight. Nonetheless, when she entered the lounge, I saw behaviors that lied about her. I entered the hotel lobby with my phone vibrating constantly. I ignored the worried messages from friends and family. I knew that I had won already. Emily would not know what I had done until it was too late. It was a new lease of life for me. The plan was simple, clean, and foolproof. I had the drinks and the fun, all finalized without any permission. It was a well-planned revenge on my part. This was far from easy though. I had to go through some hard stuff first. However, I went through it all instead of just wallowing in it. Now, it was done. The look of the world had changed suddenly, as if the dark clouds had given way for a bright new day.